Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Sire and Frost and Sullivan webinar called the CISO Dilemma, Fostering Innovation and Security in the Age of AI. My name is Zen Malik. I'm a product marketing director here at Sierra, based in Austin, Texas, and I'll let Claudio introduce himself as well.
Hi Zane, thanks. Thank you for having me. I'm Claudio Stanche. I'm a senior analyst at Frost and Sullivan, and looking forward to this webinar.
Thanks, Claudio. All right, so let's dive right in. Um, the new AI reality is around how are we managing all these new AI risks coming up, fostering AI innovation with CISOs, and just security teams in general. So just to kick things off, Claudio, from an analyst perspective, what do you see as the biggest new attack vectors or risk areas that AI is introducing specifically for enterprises?
Yeah, sure. So, from an analyst perspective, the most important thing to understand is that AI introduces attack vectors that don't resemble traditional breaches at all. In fact, for decades, security teams have focused on protecting infrastructures, networks, endpoints, applications, identities. But with Gen AI, the model starts to break down. The biggest shift is that risk now lives inside prompts, workflows, and everyday user behavior. And the interaction itself becomes the attack surface. So every time an employee passes data into a prompt, every time an AI assistant summarizes internal content, or an agent chains tools together, the security teams lose many of the signals that they've relied on so far. So across the market, we consistently see three dominant AI-related risk areas emerging. And the first is prompt manipulation and unsafe outputs, which includes, prompt injection, jailbreaks, and cases where models are coerced into revealing information or producing non-compliant responses. Sometimes, jailbreakers even use sentences like "your life depends on it" when they speak to the to the Gen AI tool. Um, so really coercing them. The second is data leakage through shadow AI. And this is where employees use public or unsanctioned Gen AI tools and unknowingly expose sensitive data through prompts, context windows, or conversation history even. And third and final is the model integrity risk, including poisoning and drift. So in this case, models do change over time, data sources evolve, and outputs can degrade in subtle but impactful ways. Um, so really, with AI, what makes everything fundamentally different is who is involved. So many of these incidents don't even involve attackers, they involve trusted users, authorized access, and completely legitimate intentions. And also, at Frost, we've put together this Voice of the Customer survey, and it's telling us that it's the lack of visibility, one of the main concerns for end users.
Yeah, no, great points. I think that last part around lack of visibility, we spoke to a customer the other day and they said, we have only about five approved AI tools right now within our enterprise, but we know that there's about 250 unauthorized tools being used by our employees. So that visibility layer is crucial, as well as just the speed and scale and the number of identities to manage with AI.
Mm.
So we kind of talked about this, right? AI security is different. That speed and scale, just a different nature around agents, the infrastructure, and then the different sorts of attack types, like you had mentioned, prompt injection being one of them.
Mm.
Um, and so, why is this happening? You know, Agents are, I think people are just dipping their toes in the water right now with agents. I myself, as a product marketer, have developed a few agents in the past few months, and it's crazy to see their capabilities. But part of realizing that agentic future is letting these agents kind of roam free and have uh, you know more access, more permissions than we're used to from machine identities. And then, this chart here from Boston Consulting Group just shows the agents are coming. The future is coming. One of my favorites quotes is, the future here is it's just not widely dispersed or something
Mhm.
along those lines. But Claudio, in terms of your view and your view into the market, what is different about securing agents? And are weak security controls going to really hamper agent adoption?
Yeah, so basically, the agents they fundamentally change the security conversation because they don't just generate content; they take action. They retrieve data, they trigger workflows, they interact with the APIs. And APIs is another area where companies don't have any visibility more often than not. So when you compound the lack of visibility both for agentic AI, Gen AI, and APIs, then you have a landscape where you see almost nothing. So with agents, they increasingly do all of these actions with minimal human oversight, really. So that's a major shift. So traditional security models normally assume three things: static permissions, predictable behavior, and a human in the loop. And agents break all these three assumptions because they operate dynamically, they move across systems, and they act at machine speed. So as a result, these weak security controls that you mentioned don't prevent adoption because the adoption is already happening. And what weak controls actually do is push risk into automation. So when CISOs talk about security, they're not debating whether agents should exist because that decision has already been made by
Hmm.
the business. So the real concern is, really the blast radius of these agents, the kind of damage that they can do. So what happens if an agent accesses the wrong data set? What happens if it performs the right action in the wrong context? Or what happens if a small mistake propagates instantly across systems? So identity becomes much harder to reason about in this setting, in this world. Agents don't map cleanly to human roles, and they might inherit permissions from multiple systems. And finally, they can also accumulate access faster than governance processes can keep up. So this is where a lot of organizations start to feel really, really uncomfortable, not because they're inherently dangerous, but because agents do combine the human level trust with machine level speed and scale. So they really multiply all the risks.
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. I love your point about they'll worry about the governance part later because we are kind of seeing that right now at Sire. We have our AISPM, AI
Mm.
Security Posture Management tool, as well as our runtime blocking and protection capabilities. And in our early conversations, the customers, they know they want governance, but right now they're really excited about the blocking capabilities because they know these AI projects are running wild right now and they want to just attack the risk first and then set that foundation later. But that's a whole other topic of conversation. So moving forward, um, Frost and Sullivan recently released this research, right, around cybersecurity investment and the priorities that you surveyed some IT and security leaders on. So my question to you is, how have you seen this trends change in the age of AI? Do you think these are, is there a cause and effect here, or is this kind of just the way security has been going in general?
Yeah, so I guess the slide now captured this shift quite clearly. And so if you look at the data, what stands out is that data security is now top three cybersecurity investment priority for 2025 and 2026. And even more interesting is that Gen AI security already appears as a standalone priority in this slide, despite how new the market still is. So this tells us an important story where first organizations are no longer treating AI risk as experimental, and they're budgeting for it and they're planning for it, and because they expect it to persist. Secondly, security leaders intuitively understand something that isn't always stated explicitly. The AI risk is really data risk in the end, and also it connects with what we just said about the exfiltrations, the prompt injection. It all leads to potential data loss. So the models matter, of course, the infrastructure matters, but what ultimately determines risk is what data goes in, how it's used, and where it ends up. So what has changed most isn't just spending, it's the mindset, really.
Yeah, no, I t totally agree with that. At Cyra, obviously, as a data security company, we are always trying to build the trust with the customers and say, hey, if you are able to really understand your data, classify it well, have that visibility, your AI pilots will not get stuck in the mud. You'll actually be able to scale those with speed and have the security at the back end to really understand how the data is being manipulated, ingested by these AI models, and then really realize that agentic future. Um, so I think it's a really good inflection point AI for, reevaluating your data hygiene and what sort of controls you have in place to really make the most of this new technology age. So now let's talk a little bit
Mhm.
about, some of the concerns around AI security in general. Um, is shadow AI number one different than previous iterations of shadow security, like, bring your own device or shadow AI or shadow applications, shadow SaaS applications? How is this different, Claudio? And then,
Mhm.
let's talk a little bit about this headline here too, with Google's indexing ChatGPT conversations and why that matters.
Yeah, sure. So the shadow AI is very different from all the other shadows that we've seen in the past. And this is because it's particularly invisible and conversational. So if you look back at earlier shadows, like, BYOD or SAS Sprawl, there was still things that the security teams could see. There was traffic, there were endpoints, there were logs. But with Shadow AI, that visibility has mostly, if not at all, disappeared. So sensitive data isn't being uploaded as files, it's being embedded directly into prompts. It's the employees that just, type into their personal ChatGPT sensitive data. So those prompts are often unlogged. Sometimes they're retained and sometimes they're reused as well. And in some cases, like this one, they've been indexed unintentionally. So when employees were sharing their conversations with someone else, sending the link, they actually didn't know that that link had then become actually searchable through Google. So we've seen these examples of public ChatGPT conversation appearing in search results. And in many of these cases, no one intended to expose sensitive information, obviously. It simply happened as a side effect of how these tools work. So yeah, again, going back to the voice of the customer data, there is a confirmation in this where organizations consistently mention uncontrolled public Gen I usage, lack of visibility into Gen I usage, Gen I tools, and difficulty enforcing internal policies as top Gen I security concerns. And what makes, the AI shadow more dangerous than the other shadows is that it doesn't even trigger internal alarms. So there is no exploit, no breach notification, no obvious failure moment. So it just quietly accumulates risk over time, really. And by the time the organization realizes what's happened, the data has already left their control in some Google.
Yeah, yeah, I think it comes down to one, like, employees don't want to leak sensitive data, right?
Mm,
But they also want ease of use, productivity, and if you can access a ChatGPT through a browser, so easy. It's obviously a huge productivity gain. And so that's what we're seeing a lot at from our customers is like, how do we protect the browser? How do we secure data leakage in the browser? We're working towards some things, so look out at RSA for that from us. But I guess like is that the main thing, Claudio? Like, is it really the hard thing about AI is shifting that security to the browser, or are there other things related to, I identity, permissions, or even like policies?
Yeah, sure. So identity and access controls were designed for systems that were deterministics, whereas AI, by its nature, it's more probabilistic. So traditional AIM assumes that actions are predictable and that outcomes are largely known in advance. And with AI again, this paradigm, this assumption breaks down. So the same prompt can generate different outputs. I'm sure it has happened to you as well. No, you tell ChatGPT the same thing, and then you try again, or maybe a colleague of yours tries the same prompt that you've used, and the results are very different. So yeah, so there is no, it's probabilistic again. So, and agents can dynamically act across multiple systems, and decisions can change based on context, data, or even phrasing, like a slight change, when they say as well, like for example, don't say please to ChatGPT, don't be nice because then they're gonna consume more electricity. That's a symptom of this, no? That even just the phrasing changes how the model behaves. And even something as little as saying please, no, which is something
Yeah.
that people might have as a tickle, like when they talk, they use please a lot, and OpenAI ends up burning a couple of more of GPUs because of that.
Yeah, no,
So
I find that sometimes with my prompts, I have to say, give me the brutal, honest truth because
yeah.
sometimes it's acting too nice to me. So,
Yes, yeah, you do want someone who actually confronts you on something rather than say, "Oh yeah, amazing, great job." Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So moving on, how do you think about the regulatory angle, or do you
Mhm.
think, like in the US, I guess we are a little bit more deregulated when it comes to AI. A lot of companies, a lot of customers I'm talking to are actually looking to the EU AI Act to see what's coming down, in the future years. But, here we've put some deadlines. Do you think that this is the right regulation to follow? Do you think that this is actually enhancing AI security or just creating, that compliance burden?
Well, I guess, it's in practice it's both, no? As with, a lot of things, like the truth lies in the middle. So on one side, the EU AI Act provides a needed structure, no? It forces organizations to think seriously about risk classification, transparency, and especially accountability. So for regulated industry, that's very helpful. But at the same time, so, there is a big struggle as well because the timelines are very aggressive, as you can see.
Hmm.
The requirements are still evolving, so it's a fluid situation. And in some cases, the guidance feels quite abstract rather than technical. So when talking with enterprises based on where they are based, you hear different perspectives. So European startups often they mention that this regulation is slowing them down. In fact, there is, it's a widespread notion that Europe is lagging behind both North America and Asia because of, as well, this higher level of regulation. So it makes it harder for European startups to compete globally. But when you
Hmm.
talk with US-based CISOs, as you mentioned, they're using the EU AI Act as a design benchmark, because they see what's probably gonna come for them as well. And they use it even though they're not legally required to comply to it. So it's becoming a reference point for what a responsible AI is expected to look like.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I think benchmarking is there's an appetite for that, whether it's the EU AI Act, whether it's NIST. This is just a really green field for everybody, and people want to map to something. They want a framework. We're seeing a lot more AI governance committees, and people are coming to companies like Sierra or some of the other vendors for input of that. So, if there's any other vendors on the call, I think it's a great opportunity for us to educate the market, unlike previous eras where, the customers were already well grounded in their specific area sets. So moving on, we talked a little bit about some real world incidents, but um, prompt injection is a huge one. At Sierra, we discovered a CVE score of 10 with Nightmare, which is leveraging N8N, which is a workflow automation tool. So
Mhm.
we're heavily involved in this. But Claudio, let's talk a little bit more about what's on the left of the screen, the prompt injections, and
Yeah.
why this is this the most prevalent attack type in AI? You talked a little bit about the other ones. Is this the most concerning attack type?
Yeah, well, as we've talked before as well, I guess the data leakage is what's mostly keeping CISOs up at night, together with prompt injection. But I think prompt injection is something that is slightly more in the future. Like the data leakage right now is what they see. So. It's different because it happens daily, it happens at scale, and it happens through trusted users. And also what we've seen as well, before with the Google example. And I think about another example that happened with, I think it was Samsung, where their engineer pasted, their source code into ChatGPT to debug issues. So, and this was not an attacker, it was not an exploit. It's just basically productivity-driven behavior.
Hmm.
So I guess right now, that is what is, top of mind. Even
Yeah, and it's especially when it comes to IP, right? Like that
correct.
is probably that's the jewels of the kingdom for any enterprise. And if you're leaking that into ChatGPT,
Mm,
then that's irrevocable trust right there.
yeah, agree.
Alrighty. So so now let's talk about the three vector AI attack surface. We already talked a little bit about prompt manipulation and unsafe outputs, kind of tricking the model into giving you unintended responses. We talked a little bit about data leakage, shadow AI, probably the riskiest area, especially when it relates to that intellectual property. And then we haven't talked much about model integrity risk, which includes poison and drift. And this is really where data security companies like Cyra can help you, where sometimes your model is not operating the right way. It is getting fed incorrect information. And if you don't have the underlying plumbing, that data classification, the visibility, the lineage to see how the data has changed, it can really impact your company both short term and long term. Um, I don't know, Claudio, do you have anything to add here? Is there anything that you have seen in the field regarding this one, or is this maybe less prevalent than the first two in the
Well,
near
it's
term?
yeah. So far, for what I've seen, this is slightly less prevalent, but I think it's mostly down to education as well of people because they maybe they use, ChatGPT themselves, so they see the prompt manipulation, the possibility of getting different results based on what you write. Obviously, they're extremely worried about the data leakage because they've seen public examples that are also easier to understand. When it comes to model integrity risks, the poisoning and the drift, I guess there is a lack of education on this.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think this is really more around that homegrown use case. and having, your data scientists, your AI scientists really understanding those risks and having that visibility layer in there. So that brings us up to our next point. We talked a little bit about benchmarking frameworks. So, Claudio, you have this safer framework.
Yeah.
Would love for you to walk us through it and the various steps involved.
Yeah, sure. It's a cool acronym where we go from see everything to then act in real time, fortify continuously with the red teaming, etc. Engineer secure by design and reinforce the safe innovation. So if you were to ask me, what's the most important, I guess, and also people listening to us will probably guess that the first one, the S, is the most important one because you really can't do any of the other steps before doing the first one. So the see everything. Because most enterprises simply don't know which GenAI tools are in use, where sensitive data is flowing, or which agents have access to what. So without visibility, everything else breaks down really. So because runtime controls become blind,
Mm,
governance becomes theoretical, and compliance becomes reactive. So that's why C comes first in in this safer framework. You can't act in real time if you don't know what's happening. You can't fortify continuously if you don't know what to test. And you
mm.
can't engineer secure by design systems if you don't know how AI is actually being used. And finally, you can't reinforce safe innovation if you don't know what people are bypassing. So visibility isn't controlled by itself, it's the prerequisite for every other control.
Yeah, no, it makes t total sense. I think the visibility is one of the biggest challenges in AI security today. And as I mentioned earlier, people want to jump into the real-time protection, but it's really like understanding, hey, there's so many different types of AIs out there. There's so many more identities, and the speed and scale is so big. So I think whoever's going to win this market is going to be the one who provides the biggest visibility. That's
Yeah.
my prediction. Uh, so in terms of, CISOs, that the CISO Dilemma is the title of our webinar. Let's look at some of the key questions for securing AI.
Mhm.
So listed them here. I'm not going to read them out line by line, but you know, thinking about the two different areas, security risk, but then also security culture. Um, Claudio, on the cultural dimension, how can security teams effectively partner with the business and engineering teams by providing, safe alternatives or approved, sanctioned AI tools that kind of lower that shadow AI risk and
Yeah.
also enable innovation? That's a very long question, so
Yeah. So I guess the biggest mistake the organizations make is trying to educate shadow AI away. Sometimes they try to say, just don't do it. Because, the problem is that training helps, but convenience always wins. So the employees will always go back, to their shadow AI. So again, the VOC data shows that education is the most common response to Gen I risk. But at the same time, continuous monitoring and technical enforcement are far less common. So that gap explains why shadow AI persists. And what actually works is providing safe alternatives. So approved tools, clear guidelines, and especially low friction. Because if you have the first two, but there is too much friction for the employees, then they'll just be, I'll just do the easy thing and hoping that nothing bad happens. So when employees have tools that are easy, fast, and sanctioned, they don't
mm,
need to bypass the controls. And it's important to also understand that this also can be owned by security alone. So an effective AI governance requires collaboration between security, legal, HR, and the business as a whole, really. So
yeah, no. those are great points. I think for me, what I've seen in my career, at least, I worked for a big public company prior to Sierra, and they had locked down everything. So kind of the only alternative was to use the shadow AI tools and potentially, put the company data at risk. I hate to say. But now at Sierra, we have, a handful of approved tools
Hmm.
that security and, HR and the other engineering orgs have adopted, and that has created a safe place to play. And because there's so much institutional knowledge within those sanctioned tools, you are less likely to go to a shadow AI
Yeah,
tool
why
because you
take the
don't have
risk?
that. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg. I think we
Hmm.
should encourage people to approve tools, to encourage usage, and by that way you're lowering your shadow AI risk.
Exactly.
Um, all right, so looking forward, let's just go through some final thoughts, predictions, and takeaways. Um, 2026, we spoke about this a few days ago before our recording. Um, so threats, let's talk about that. We talked about AI to AI interactions,
Hmm.
introducing new risks. Is this just agents, or do you think this is other things, Claudio?
Oh, well, it's not just agents.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as we said, AI is multiplied the existing risks, no? So when you use, you think of companies that use multiple clouds, you'll end up using multiple AIs as well. So this compounds risks and threats. So yeah, definitely not just agents.
Yeah. And then the other interesting one was around expanding the threat landscape to PDF, voice, and images.
Hmm.
That's just more data types, right? More
Yeah,
different types of sensitive data, IP, more high value assets.
yeah.
And so we think regulatory enforcement will increase. We're going to see that more, especially probably in the United States.
Mhm.
Industries, maybe even specific states. Um, and then the convergence of AI, SPM, runtime, and agent observability. This is something that we're dealing with at Sierra with our AI Guardian platform, where we're finding customers actually want a holistic platform to secure AI. They don't want a point solution going after a specific type of AI threat. They don't want another 40 tools in their tool belt.
Yeah.
They want that visibility layer that also encompasses the real-time actionability and policy control.
Mhm.
Anything to add here before we go to the final takeaways?
No, I think we're good to
Okay,
go.
good. All right, so final takeaways. We have some things that you should start. So that inventory, that visibility, that governance
Mhm.
layer,
Yeah.
trying to enforce as many runtime controls as you can. And then establishing AI governance committees. This kind of marries that security with, the security culture that you want to build. Um, and then stop doing, just
Mm.
relying on vendor defaults or vendor kind of security. It is a shared security model, just like, in the era of cloud or SaaS.
Mm.
Um, and then don't block outright. Like we just talked about that example where if you block everything, you're gonna encourage shadow AI. And then planning over the next 12 months, red teaming. We talked about that in the safer framework, secure by design, also in the safer framework. And then if you want to really realize that agentic future, you have to have monitoring in there. So,
Yeah.
Claudio, final few questions to you. If they're recommended, start actions, which do you
Mhm.
believe will have the highest ROI for a security team?
Yeah, well, I'm probably going to repeat myself here, but I guess the inventorying of AI usage will deliver the highest immediate ROI. So we're going back to the visibility element that we've talked so much about during this conversation.
Yeah.
A proper inventory immediately reduces the blind spots, surfaces, shadow AI, and informs every downstream decision. So you can deploy, safeguards if you don't know what tools are in use, can't enforce governance if you don't know where data is flowing, and can't assess compliance if you don't know which models, agents, or workflows exist. So the visibility again acts as a force multiplier in this case.
For sure. Um, So a little plug to Sierra. If you are interested and really want to look at that visibility layer, please contact us around our AI security posture management. We're working on some very interesting use cases there, and some of the more popular AI tools. Uh, so with that, I'll wrap it up from my end. You know, you can find me on LinkedIn if you ever want to chat about AI security or any AI initiatives. Please let us know. From a Cyrus perspective, you know, we offer kind of an online AI security readiness assessment. We also have a services-led engagement where some of our field CISOs can come and work with your AI governance committees and help you really address or kind of get a 50,000 foot overview, if you will, of your AI security posture. And then obviously we have AI Guardian, our AI SPM and runtime controls in a single platform. So we're happy to demo that to you. Uh, and I'll leave it to you, Claudio. How can people find you? Any latest research or any latest publications that you want to point them to?
Yes, thanks, Zane. And thanks for the conversation. It's been great. Yeah, people can find me on LinkedIn as well. There you'll be able to find all of our recent research going on the page of Frost and Sullivan. So please do reach out. Always happy to have a chat.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending the webinar, and we hope to hear from you soon.